Hello, my name is Jacob Doyle, and this is my narrative discourse for research methods. My personal discourse this semester focused in on the interest of urban renewal development projects within major cities. The typology on its own requires a lot of background research, of which it takes a project to come to fruition through its understanding of location, site conditions, and the client brief. Through these three main factors, there are many other fallout factors that affect each and every one of these through the influences of the culture around it and the material that's available to the project, the style of project, and the program analysis from the client brief, as well as the cultural input on what type of project is needed for the area, as well as simple things such as the project budget and the volume parameters of any project. Going into depth on some of these aspects, you have the performance analysis that you would do on any new project, as well as the existing conditions around it to determine what is and isn't working, as well as the understanding of the persistent patterns in history that affect the project itself. These historical background checks are important in understanding the previous mentioned list items and how history and the performance of the space around can enhance or hurt the desired program in the end. Now, looking at the site as a whole, there's about three ways to go about understanding the site, whether it be the visual range, of which it's anything that you can see from the localized site, the walkable range, which is the affected culture and the lifestyle predicted for any person involved in that project, as well as the cultural range of the larger community around the site itself that will place an impact in material, style, culture, as well as overall feeling and acceptability for the project. A project that I studied this semester from the lateral office in Turkey was a very good example of this sort of contextual understanding of site, as the project being located close to city center and having access to both freeway, public transit in ferry, and trains left the site open for a lot of possibility of movement through people. The site, formerly used as a military infrastructure campus, was left largely abandoned after the Cold War. The former campus in its abandoned state left many tall structures, as well as walls, roofings, major roadways, and this could be largely used by the lateral office team. They saw great value in its lowscape as well as its vistas down towards the water, and decided to maintain this kind of folly-esque sense of movement through the major roadways with lower-lying buildings, and then bookending it with two larger structures at the end to denote the gateways of this new site. As for its new purpose, it would be used as a commercial center as well as institutional and recreational. I found that a lot of the characteristics of the lateral office project correlated with mine in how I went through my own research process. Seen on the left of the flowchart that I've shown earlier in the presentation, highlighting the three main points of location, site condition, and client brief, they, in contrast, have location, conditions, and function and program. Two things of which I denoted that were tertiary fallouts, but seem to host significant importance in the design process. And through the connection of lines, I found there to be a high level of continuity between their research and my own, and how I go about it, and how the questions that I derive from these tertiary elements can drive a project and create a factual-based design. Some of the overlapping elements that we had in common between myself and the lateral office were the performance and the understanding of how the building can operate and what you can use it for, the goal of persistent history and understanding how the site can affect and design for the future, as well as processes and experiences in the form of understanding the conceptual setup of something before it has been designed and understanding the impact of viewshed, space, scale, as well as accessibility and feasibility. Other things include analysis of the site and usage, and the research and the functionality of history in the space. Some things that made us different were the analysis and cultural relevance, or on my side, that affected how the project could be viewed. There was a severe lack of information on the lateral office side. However, the research into the larger amount of space and usage of the existing buildings, being something that was unique to the lateral office, helped drive their project and made the feasibility of the project, while maybe not culturally involved, was very pragmatically involved in the understanding of what was there to build off of, in contrast of what is there for us to build for the people. This kind of research base is incredibly important, I find, in my own work, as to understanding how the project will be perceived in its performance, as well as its cultural significance of the site. From my understanding of the flowcharts that I previously created and the flowcharts that I created based on the lateral office, I come up with a flowchart of my own where the project in the center is both affected by and affects the cost, client, culture, and conditions of the site. And I think this comes to more of a final form of how I come to understand the research and methodology of the development of a project through the different constituents of program, location, volume, and regional influence being affected and controlling the change of the project. Skimming over the location of the project due to the fact that it's often confined by the requirements of the client and determined by them, the program analysis of the project is an incredibly crucial portion of the project in the beginning stages to determine the spatial layout of the project, as well as the relationships needed, but also to understand the larger context of the project in understanding space, natural light, movement, flow, as well as orientation and organization of different relationships and areas needed. Often working in a two-dimensional layout for program analysis, one then has to consider the three-dimensional implications of the design, of which in the volume parameters you can truly begin to start understanding the requirements for some spaces, including vertical transportation, light and vent, as well as overall spaces, and understanding and get a more sectional view where one can start to envision space and not just layout of the project. Finally, one comes to the regional influences to use that to inform the design, whether it be material choices, aesthetics, overall conceptual elevation and plan layouts, but also greenery, accessories, and other cultural influences as far as style goes. The relationships formed in the project between the client, the cost, and other elements of the design process all blend into one another to create a final design and have a way of which informing it based on the culture, based on the context, and based on the client that determine if the design was truly worth the client's budget, but also beneficial and aesthetically pleasing for the culture around and everyone who may interact with it. And these are the factors that truly affect proper urban design. Thank you.